This is a quick walkthrough of the changes I've made to the Agile Planning portion of the Unstoppable Planning Tour. Later on, I will re-record a full walkthrough of this presentation. So the feedback we had was, one, we want to make sure that we have references to all content that's now in place. What I've done is simplified in this example, simplified the definition to make it easier to explain to people what we're up to, and then walked into the standard model of what is traditional versus agile planning, what's that look like. So no changes here. We've kept the conversation the same about the advantages of agile over traditional planning. And again, the benefits have remained the same. The outline sections remain the same. We've slightly adjusted some of the content in each one though. So for eliminate spreadsheets, again, we go through the standard problem definition and walk through what are the statistics involved with spreadsheets and why they cause so much problems in the planning process. And then we've changed this section. One of the questions is to begin explaining how Anaplan deals with each of these 5 agile points. So in this case, spreadsheets and complexity. The storyline is inside your organization, there are many different sources of data. And many times to get the data into your planning system, you issue multiple spreadsheets. So there's a whole bunch of information out there. And in fact, what we do know is almost 30% of organizations have between 2 and 5 different systems that they need to integrate into their planning. 23% have between 6 and 10 systems, and 20% have 11 or more. That means over 70% of the organizations are integrating these multiple systems together. And the dilemma is the integration doesn't work very well. It's almost like that proverb of the 8 blind people and the elephant. Depending which spreadsheet you're looking at, you have a different view of the organization. And we try to join these different views together, but they don't reconcile. So wouldn't it be interesting if instead we could capture a single version of the relationship between these things in the cloud? So join those together into a model that says, here's the standard definition of our regions. Here's a standard hierarchy and list of our products and revenues and quotas, and join that into an integrated framework. Now, the benefit of doing that is a couple of things. One is we have one version of each of those lists, but more importantly, we can go to the organization and effectively crowdsource information. So any individual that knows even a portion of that model can ante up that portion, and it will fit into this context in a way that joins on to all the others. So I'm not reinventing the wheel, and everyone can contribute what they know about the overall system. And then I'll emphasize what the benefits are. And they're things like the fact that we don't have to eliminate all the spreadsheets at once. We can just knock them off one at a time and hit the most important ones first. Secondly, the results allow us to crowdsource the data in such a way that even if we don't understand that whole portion of the model, we can gather what it is we do know and begin building around that nugget. And then in closing, I'm going to emphasize that, in fact, even though this framework is in the cloud and has this connectivity, it looks just like a spreadsheet. Most users would not be able to tell the difference. Then we move on to the presentation that's consistent with what we saw before. So we go into simplifying the planning model. I improved the animations here so we can see better what the impact is of adding more drivers and the result of it, and the conversation about where it is we need to focus going forward. So that's all the same. The example's the same of the outcome from doing this kind of planning system. Then what I did is moved on to now a new portion, which is explaining where this adds value and how we solve it in Anaplan. So we go back to the cloud, and in this example, the cloud, we've shown a framework that connects things like strategy with our revenue model, with what our product strategy is, channels, customers, and so forth. And what we should be able to do is, if we're going to plan for a particular product, let's say new products, which has to do with our strategy, which is about introducing new products in the marketplace, products and revenue, we can take those and build out what is the strategic points at play, the strategic revenue that should come from new products. And then let's model a different item. Let's say we're now going to model the revenue from existing products. And obviously, maybe there's lots of revenue, but it's less strategically important. So the net is it's a less important driver going forward. So what we can now begin doing, because that environment links both strategy and planning dollars, we can begin to understand how the strategy drivers contribute to the overall model. So in this case, we can see a clear waterfall of which drivers we need to make sure that we do a comprehensive job on and which ones have a diminishing return. In fact, we can take a look at that, and as we focus on each one, understand each driver's strategic impact and what specific drivers we might want to consider. Again, we get that benefit because we integrate these elements into Anaplan. Then we go through the same conversation about idle time and the overall process, and then we move on again to how we solve it in Anaplan. And I'm going to go back to the same to give that connectivity back to that, again, that cloud metaphor. And the idea now is, as we iterate any one of these plans in any sequence, they obviously impact all the others because they're joined together. So I no longer need to go through a big plan refresh. As soon as we know information, we can feed it into the system and use that to give us a new plan. So think of that as driver-based planning beyond budgeting, the idea that we're now flexible and can react faster to changes in the business environment. Then we go back into the slide we had before, which talks about the benefits. Again, we've added in all the footnotes here. Now we move on to the planning that we're going to talk about, which is focusing in on the key things in your business. So a little bit of interactivity I've added in. We're going to ask the audience, what is your primary driver with a show of hands? And by the way, it's what I call Florida voting, which means you get 2 votes. And from this, we'll discover that across this, everyone needs these different plans. So we need the ability to do sales forecasting and sales planning, sales capacity, commission planning, that kind of thing. We need the ability to do human capital planning and so forth. So based on that, and the idea that we all do it in kind of a similar fashion. In fact, if you think about it, we're probably already building very similar spreadsheets. What if we had a series of apps and you could just choose the app you wanted? Well, that's what the Anaplan environment allows you. We have a series of apps out there that do specific things, some of which are designed by Anaplan, some of which are designed by other experts in the field. And the idea is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just grab those and use those as a starting point that you'll then modify for your organization. That allows you to focus on what matters. Then the final is about how we monitor and improve our agility by reacting better. And so the idea is, obviously, Anaplan gives you the opportunity of monitoring all the standard variants and take a look at it by the different dimensions of, channel, customer, product, time, all that kind of thing, and do that same old analysis. But again, the unique benefit we have here is because we've joined these things together, we can also understand, are we actually executing on the strategy? And here's what we know. We know our research at Harvard tells us that 80% of strategies fail, not because they're not brilliant, but because they're not executed. So we need to make sure that we're closing the loop, that we are actually executing the plan. So what if we go back to the chart we saw before? Remember where we talked about the strategy points and the key drivers by area, the diminishing return? We can now take a look to see, are we actually achieving those numbers? Where are we actually getting our plan numbers from? And understand what the gap is. Now let's take a look at this, because this is a revolutionary way of looking at planning. What if we could take a look and discover the level of strategic focus that we had from that first chart, the strategy dollar focus, and see how much our regional plan is contributing to that, roughly the same. See how much our new product focus plan is contributing to that, roughly the same focus. And oh, we have a problem here. Clearly the customer plans do not line up with our strategy. The customer plan is probably talking about selling existing products or penetrating new markets, something different than the strategy. So by using this integrated model, we can understand which dimensions are not consistent with the strategy and focus in on that alignment between strategy and execution. And then we bring it to an end.